Okay, let's get into this. I want you to picture something for a minute. A corporate headquarters, but not glass walls and fancy coffee machines.
No, not at all.
I want you to picture Tokyo 1946. The city is just flattened. We're talking about a bombed-out department store, concrete crumbling.
And when it rains, and it did, the employees had to literally open umbrellas inside because the roof was just full of holes.
It's this scene of complete devastation, and you have two guys, right, sitting on like wooden crates.
A young physicist, Akio Morita, and his partner, an engineer, Masaru Ibuka, they have about 190,000 yen, which is basically nothing at that point.
Right, and 20 employees are just looking at them, waiting.
And they're sitting there with this one huge, terrifying question hanging in the air.
What do we build? What can we possibly build in the middle of all this?
Exactly. And the answer to that question is, I think, the first massive surprise in this whole story, because the company that would become Sony,
The global icon, yeah.
started by building a kitchen appliance.
And a really bad one, from what I'm reading.
Oh, it's terrible. It was an electric rice cooker. But you have to, understand the thinking. They were trying to solve a real basic need.
So what was the idea?
The theory was simple physics, really. It was a wooden tub with some aluminum electrodes at the bottom. The wet rice and water complete the circuit. It heats up, cooks the rice, the water evaporates.
And the circuit breaks. And you have perfect rice.
In theory, yes. In practice, the voltage in post-war Japan was all over the place, and the rice itself was inconsistent. So you either got inedible mush
or charcoal
or burnt charcoal. It was a complete failure. They didn't sell a single one.
It's just wild to think that's the origin story, a burnt pot of rice. So, okay, the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how they got from that to becoming, the most famous electronics brand on the planet.
And we're digging into Morita's autobiography, Made in Japan, and some other really fantastic sources on his management style.
And we have to see Morita as more than a CEO.
Oh, absolutely. He was the man who single-handedly rebranded an entire nation.
Mm-hmm.
In the 50s, Made in Japan meant cheap junk.
It was a warning label.
It was. It meant flimsy paper toys. Morita is the one who turned that into a symbol of high-tech quality.
So, back to the leaky department store. The rice cooker is a bust. How do they survive?
Well, desperation,
Yeah.
Ibuka, the engineer, he starts cobbling together these little shortwave radio adapters.
Okay.
And people were starved for news, so those actually sold, kept the lights on. But the real pivot, the moment they go from a repair shop to a real tech company, is the tape recorder.
But that wasn't their invention, right? The Americans already had them.
Correct. Ibuka saw an American one at the Japan Broadcasting Corporation and was just mesmerized. He came back and said, we have to build this. But, and this is the part people miss, building the machine was one thing. The real nightmare was the tape.
The magnetic tape?
Yeah. There was no supply chain. Nobody in Japan made it. You couldn't just order a spool.
So they had to invent it from scratch.
Right there in that leaky building.
So how do you even start to make magnetic tape in 1940s Tokyo?
With a frying pan.
You're kidding me!
I wish. They needed ferric oxide, right? The magnetic powder. So they literally bought oxalic acid, put it in a frying pan, and roasted it.
Wow.
And they needed a base. In the U.S., they used plastic. No plastic in Japan. So they used paper.
Just paper?
They cut cellophane into strips by hand with razor blades.
Yeah.
And it gets worse.
How does it get worse than a frying pan and razor blades?
They needed something to stick the rust powder to the paper. A binder. They ended up boiling this soup of sticky rice.
No.
Yes. They were painting a rice and rust mixture onto paper strips with little badger hairbrushes.
And that actually...
Barely.
Yeah.
The sound quality was awful at first, but they kept at it. And eventually they built the G-Type, the first tape recorder in Japan. I weighed 35 kilograms.
77 pounds.
And it cost a fortune.
Yeah.
And this is the critical moment for Morita. They poured everything into this thing. It was a technological marvel for Japan at the time.
And nobody bought it.
It just sat there. Morita was baffled. He'd show it to people and they'd look at this giant box and just say, it's a toy. It's too expensive. Why do I need to record my own voice?
That's classic trap, right? If you build it, they will come.
But they don't. And this is where Morita has his big realization. He understands that having the tech isn't enough. You have to be a merchandiser. You have to teach the market why they need your thing.
So he stops selling the box.
And starts selling the solution.
Yeah.
He looks around and asks, okay, who has a problem that this can solve?
Right.
He finds out the Japan Supreme Court is short on stenographers. So he hauls this 77-pound beast over there and says, this isn't a toy. This is an automated stenographer.
And that actually flies.
Hold 20 of them on the spot. Then he went to school, sold it as a language learning tool. He literally created the market where one didn't exist before.
That shift in thinking from building stuff to creating markets seems like it becomes the company's DNA. But they had another problem.
It's a big one.
Their name.
Oh, yeah. At the time, they were called Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo.
Which doesn't exactly roll off the tongue.
Try putting that on a product. So Morita visits the U.S. and Europe in the early 50s, and he sees Philips. He realizes a company from a small town in a small country can be a global giant.
But not with a name like that.
No. He needed something an American could say. And the way he came up with Sony wasn't just random. It was engineered.
It's
a linguistic masterpiece. He wanted a word that didn't exist in any language, but was easy to say in all of them. So he mixed the Latin word sonus, for sound, with the American slang sunny.
Like sunny boy.
Yeah, like a young, energetic kid. It was a radical move. A Japanese name in the 50s was a liability. Sony didn't sound Japanese, but it didn't sound American either.
Oh, it just sounded new.
Exactly. A blank slate he could build a reputation on.
So he has the brand, he has the mindset. Now they need to shrink the tech. This brings us to the transistor.
Right. This is Morita versus the bureaucracy. He goes to New York in '53. Here's Western Electric is licensing the transistor for $25,000.
Which for them was an insane amount of money.
A huge gamble. And when he gets back to Japan, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MIT, they were furious.
Why?
They saw it as a waste of precious foreign currency. At that time, transistors were only used for one thing, really.
Hearing aids.
Hearing aids. So MIT is saying, you want to spend all this money on hearing aid tech? They just couldn't see the vision.
But he didn't want to make hearing aids.
No. He and Ibuka wanted to make a radio small enough to fit in your shirt pocket. They basically bullied their way through the approval process, paid the money, and built the first portable transistor radio. High-tech became portable.
And that idea of portability, that's the through line, isn't it? It leads directly to the ultimate Morita moment, 1979.
The Walkman.
The Walkman. Now, we all know it was a hit, but what I found shocking in the sources was just how much internal resistance there was to it.
It was a full-blown mutiny. You have to put yourself in the mindset of a 1970s audio engineer. For decades, a good tape player meant it could record and play back.
That was the whole point.
Yeah. And Morita walks in and says, let's build one that only plays back. Let's take the recording function out.
So to the engineers, he's asking them to build a defective product.
It was heresy. And the marketing team was even more against it. They were like, Mr. Morita, no one will buy a tape recorder that doesn't record.
This is where his whole philosophy about market research comes in.
Yes. His famous line, the public does not know what is possible. He believed for something truly new, you can't ask the customer what they want. You have to show them something they couldn't even imagine.
That is a massive risk, though. If you're wrong, you sink the company.
And he knew it. He told the team, I will take personal responsibility. If we don't sell 30,000 of these, I'll resign as chairman.
Wow.
They projected sales of maybe 5,000 a month.
And they sold.
30,000 in the first 2 months. It went on to sell 250 million units.
Yeah.
It fundamentally changed how people exist in public space. You could create your own soundtrack to your life.
There's a detail in here about the headphones that I think is key.
Oh, totally. The player itself was pretty simple technologically. The real magic was the headphones.
They were new.
Well, another Sony division had developed these really lightweight headphones a few years earlier. Before that, headphones were these huge, heavy cans that weighed like 400 grams. Couldn't walk around with them.
So if he didn't have that specific piece of tech just sitting on a shelf,
the Walkman wouldn't have worked, which connects to another one of his rules. Perfect is the enemy. Launch when it's 80% ready. Let the market tell you what to fix.
I want to shift to how he actually ran the place. Because reading his book, it feels like he was running on a completely different operating system than, say, American CEOs at the time.
He called it familialism. He saw the company as a fate-sharing body.
A fate-sharing body. That sounds almost spiritual.
It meant everyone was in the same boat. The company and the employee, they rise and fall together. For him, laying off workers was a sin of management.
Which is just the polar opposite of the Jack Welch model in the U.S., where labor is just a cost to be cut to make the quarterly numbers look good.
Exactly. Morita's argument was, if you treat your people like commodities, they'll act like it. But if you offer them security, you get loyalty. You get real innovation.
And he didn't care about where you went to school either.
That was huge in Japan, which is so status conscious. He basically said, once you're hired, your school records are irrelevant. I only care about your performance. He even wrote a book about it.
And this all leads to his pretty sharp critique of American capitalism, which I have to say, reading it now, it feels incredibly relevant.
It's prophetic. He saw the U.S. shifting from making things to finance. He famously said, more people are interested in trying to shuffle paper assets around than building lasting assets by producing real goods.
Shuffling paper assets, that is a direct shot at Wall Street.
He saw the leveraged buyouts of the 80s, and he just thought it was hollow. He believed real value, real wealth, only comes from taking raw materials and adding engineering value to them to make a product.
Everything else is just moving money around.
Yeah. And then there's this line about lawyers and engineers.
Oh, that's a good one.
While the United States have been busy creating lawyers, we have been busier creating engineers. His point was that America was becoming litigious and defensive, while Japan was focused on being creative and offensive.
Speaking of creative, we have to talk about Steve Jobs. I knew Jobs was a fan, but I had no idea how deep the connection was.
It was profound. Jobs didn't just admire Sony. He wanted Apple to be Sony. You know, the famous black turtleneck?
The Isimiaki one, sure.
That whole thing started because he visited a Sony factory. He saw the workers all had these cool unified jackets. Morita explained that after the war, Sony gave workers clothes, and it became this symbol of their bond.
And Jobs wanted that for Apple.
He did. He went back to Cupertino, had vests made for everyone, and stood up in a meeting and was like, we're all going to wear these.
And how did that go over?
They booed him off the stage. They absolutely hated it.
So the uniform didn't work?
No. So Jobs just made it his personal uniform instead. But the influence went way deeper than just clothes.
The MacMan story.
Yeah, before he landed on iMac, one of his top choices for the name was MacMan, as a direct homage to the Walkman.
Wow.
But the biggest what if, the one that really stings, is the VAIO story.
Oh, man. This is a tough one for tech fans.
So picture it. It's 2001 Hawaii. Steve Jobs is literally waiting at the end of a golf course to ambush a group of Sony executives.
And he's holding a laptop.
He's holding a Sony VAIO laptop. But it's not running Windows.
It's running Mac OS.
It's running Mac OS.
But wait, Jobs hated clones. He spent years killing the Mac clone market.
He hated them, but he loved Sony's hardware. He felt the VAIO was the only laptop in the world beautiful enough to run his software. So he made an exception. He pitched them on a partnership.
And said, no, why would you say no to that?
Bad timing. The Sony engineering team had just gone through hell optimizing that VAIO for Windows. All the drivers, the power management, it was a brutal cycle. They were burnt out.
So the idea of tearing it all down and starting over for Mac OS was just too much.
They just didn't have it in them. They passed.
So we missed out on a Sony MacBook because the engineers were tired.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But it just shows you the level of respect there.
Okay, we've talked about Morita, the innovator, the manager. We have to touch on Morita, the provocateur. Because the 80s were tense.
Very tense. It's hard to explain now, but the anxiety in the U.S. about Japan then was a lot like the anxiety about China today.
Right. Buying up American landmarks, the auto industry.
People were smashing Toyotas with sledgehammers in Detroit. It was a trade war.
And right in the middle of all that, Morita co-authors a book called Japan Can Say No.
And he does not pull any punches. He argues that Japan has been way too subservient to the U.S. And he says, look, your trade deficit, that's your own fault. You got lazy. You stopped making good stuff.
The book was so controversial that he refused to have it officially translated into English.
He didn't want the heat, but it was too late. The book was a sensation. The CIA.
Wait, the CIA?
CIA made bootleg translations of it that were passed around the halls of Congress. They had to know what the leader of their biggest economic rival was thinking.
That's incredible. But even with all that friction, he didn't pull back. He had this other strategy.
Global localization. It was brilliant. Think global. Act local. He knew you couldn't run a global company from Tokyo. So he empowered Sony America and Sony Europe to act like local companies, hire their own people, make their own marketing decisions.
So if you had to boil all this down, from the burnt rice to the Walkman to taking on the U.S. government, what's the core lesson here?
For me, it comes down to his view on failure. He used to tell his young managers, don't be afraid to make a mistake, but make sure you don't make the same mistake twice.
He made the rice cooker, learned you have to create a market, and never made a kitchen appliance again.
Exactly. He didn't dwell on it. He just pivoted, kept moving.
Yeah. And for me, the thing that I just can't shake is that warning about shuffling paper.
It's haunting, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, you look at our economy today with the record stock buybacks, the crypto speculation, it feels like we are doing an awful lot of shuffling.
Morita's question would be, where are the real goods? If an economy stops focusing on creating tangible, innovative products and just focuses on moving money around to create profit, well, eventually the music has to stop. That felt true in 1989, and it feels even more true today.
That is a heavy thought to end on. Akio Morita, the man who taught the world to listen and warned us when to stop playing games. Thanks for this.
My pleasure.